it is just insane how tense you get. And every single time I watch this scene, the sequence, I am like holding my breath, even though I know the outcome already. Hey everyone, welcome back to Candid Cinema. I'm Amanda, otherwise known as AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Today I will be doing more of a throwback review in light of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 coming out on July 10th, 11th, 12th, whenever it comes out. I love this franchise. People love the Bond franchise. People love the Fast and Furious franchise. I love Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible has been my day one franchise since the very beginning, and I remember watching MI2 on loop when I was growing up, and this franchise is just absolutely incredible. It keeps getting better and better and better. So instead of doing a ranking video, which I will probably do after MI7, I wanted to review and kind of just talk about the very first Mission Impossible film. So I'm going to do MI2, MI3, straight up to MI6 with the release of MI7. Also going to be doing a review on that. But I felt like it was time. I do like an annual marathon of MI just because I love it so much. I think it's the best franchise over Bond, over Fast and Furious. I think that this has been the most consistent action franchise, and like I said, it keeps getting better. So the reason why it keeps getting better is because they trust their directors and the vision that each director brings to each film. For the first Mission Impossible, we have the extremely talented Brian De Palma. And one of my favorite films of his is Carrie. I love Carrie. And when you watch the first Mission Impossible, you get some of his stylistic elements that are so heavily used in his films fused in with a noir, an action film. This is what we have for a spy thriller. And what people tend to forget about the first Mission Impossible, it still holds up to today. All of it still holds up. But what people tend to forget is that they are adapting this from a television series, which is very hard to do, especially because you want to get all of the conventions that are used within the series and make it into a 2-hour film. And Mission Impossible is not even 2 hours. It's like an hour and 50, which is very shocking to me. But going back to De Palma, the style that he used, you have extreme close-ups. Okay, you have zoom-ins to objects that are very important. The visual storytelling that De Palma has through the camera is really important here to match the spy elements within the story. He is the one that made the first Mission Impossible film unpredictable, and every single time that you watch that first Mission Impossible film, there are small things, very subtle things in this first film that when you watch it again, you're not picking up on it and you're still surprised, which is wonderful. But there are a lot of things that De Palma does in this that he lets the audience understand what's happening extremely well because he lets his scenes breathe. Within the first mission, okay, we have Ethan Hunt going, I think it was Kristen Scott Thomas as well. You had Emilio Estevez. That was the team. And I think you had John Voight, who plays Jim. He was the head honcho. And then his wife, Claire, also in the lineup for the team for IMF. This first mission, as we choose to accept it, was very well thought out. So you have them entering this embassy party. You have Ethan Hunt in a mask. This is what Mission Impossible is known for. Those face reveals are so incredible, and Ethan has to become this person. So he walks in with Kristen Scott Thomas. They have eyes on someone who has the knock list. It's a little hard drive that has a list of everyone, and they need to keep it safe. So they're after this one guy, and they have to get into this room. They put these glasses where you're able to see everything. Okay, and it records through these glasses. So again, with De Palma, you have these close-ups on these objects, whether it's like a hearing aid or there's like a camera within the glasses, these extreme close-ups while they're talking through the earpiece, you know that there's some form of technology in the general area that they're able to see these things. So when you have that, you also have security footage that they're cutting to. So you have 3 different lenses technically that they're playing around with. And that's why it's edited so well on top of that. You are in the mindset of Ethan Hunt going through this mission, and you see that visually. And I think that's what makes it really awesome, because you feel like you're on the mission. So you have these glasses to see if they can get into the computer, get the files, blah, blah, know where it is, get the password, all of that. And they do plant it properly. So while that's happening, it's in one room. And then you see that Emilio Estevez is sitting on top of an elevator. Okay. And you see that the elevator shaft is moving obviously up and down. And you have John Voight on the computer also speaking to them and trying to reset the system, and hopefully like no one jumps on the elevator. And there's that building tension that you only have like at least a minute or two before someone walks in. And then that's where the score comes in as well, which is so, so well done. And it's not like it overpowers anything. The sound design is really important here as well, because you don't want that tension to be overpowered by the score, because those very quiet, intimate moments, the reaction shots, that's what's really important here. And you need to be able to hear a pin drop. So the softness of the score that comes in is important there too, to kind of build that for the MI film. After all that happens, they are compromised once they get out of there. Obviously, this is going to be a spoiler review. MI has been out since like the 90s. We're okay here, right? Emilio Estevez dies, and then John Voight tries to get to them. John Voight dies. Ethan thinks that John Voight's wife, Claire, dies in the car explosion. Kristen Scott Thomas dies as well. And Ethan is sitting there like, my whole team is dead. And kudos to Tom Cruise, because you know what? Everyone has their reservations about him. That's fine. He is a damn good actor, because he really sold this. He acted his butt off as Ethan Hunt, and his whole team dies on him, loses his mind. He goes to a payphone and he calls IMF. He calls IMF and he gets in line with Kittredge, telling him that his whole team's dead, doesn't understand any of that. But Ethan knows something is off, because he realizes that there's like another team that was working with them. He meets Kittredge. Kittredge tells him that there was another team because Ethan questions it. So he's like, but why would there be another team? And then Kittredge reveals that there's a mole. So to have your very first film start off with a mole, with the people that you have been working with the team that you've been involved with for so long, working at IMF, that obviously just completely breaks you down. So Ethan does that. You have amazing tilt-ups, amazing camera angles that show that something's off. And De Palma had a lot of fun with this, and you can tell. So again, close-ups really prominent here, and the angle in which that they show Kittredge losing it, and then the tilt of the camera showing that, you know, Ethan Hunt's also losing it with this information. He hears mentions of Job 314. So he's thinking it's Job 314. This is when, you know, the little details within the storyline really work out. So Job 314 turns into Job 314, which is obviously a Bible passage. So that is worked in as another like undercover aspect to this. So someone was shady and was operating under a different name, sending emails to other people. Everyone wants this knock list, and the only person that knows where it is and knows how to get it is Ethan Hunt. So obviously he's going to protect himself, protect IMF, and he's going to try to get some money out of it as well. So he meets the person that Job was working with, and her name was Maxine or whatever. He kind of goes against her and says, listen, like, I need to know who Job is. Give me the money. I know how to get the knock list. And within that minute, when he does meet her, it's like a 2-minute span when you put the floppy disk into the computer, because she has the old knock list that is like a phony, it's a fake. And the second she puts that into the computer, Kittredge is on her, IMF is on her, and she has like 2 minutes to like take it out so they don't know their location. So Ethan is ahead of the game here 100%. This is where things get interesting. He is disavowed from IMF. That means he's a rogue spy. How else are you going to move forward and try to find the knock list and get the knock list in Langley, Virginia? If you're a Bourne fan, you know exactly Langley, CIA, you know all of that. That's where the knock list is, and he has to get it. So he recruits this guy named Krieger, who is played by Jean Reno. And of course, our boy recruits Luther, who's played by Ving Rhames, who's most trustworthy, and I love him. So they are also disavowed, and they come together and they're going to break into Langley. Now, here is what's so awesome about this entire sequence is that they tell you what they have to do while they are doing it. Cuts the time in half. It's not like exposition dump, none of that. So they were firemen. Okay, they got in there, they broke in, they were firemen, they went into one of the rooms to change. They had different masks on. They got in, they had to rough up some people. Krieger is someone you cannot trust. And I'm going to get into that afterwards because it was really cool, something I just caught. But they go in there. Luther's sitting pretty outside. He is making alarms go off. He's able to manipulate the entire grid, obviously, to get into the mainframe. You have the famous scene of Ethan Hunt dropping down into the room and typing on the computer to get the actual files from Langley. So you have the mainframe there. You have the time limit of I think it was like 5 minutes or something, and everything was set up perfectly. Where Claire, who was also working with them, planted a GPS chip on the guy who goes in and out of that area. There's only one person that's allowed in there, and it's him. So they obviously had to distract him. They gave him some liquid in his coffee that was very subtle that had to make him go to the bathroom. His stomach was really upset, so he spent an extra like 5 minutes in the bathroom, which would help Ethan. But here's the thing. As Ethan's going down, beautiful visuals here, okay? It's silent. De Palma plays off of the silence of it all, the sweat that you see coming down, the grip being loosened on the rope from Krieger in the vent trying to hold him, the sweat on the glasses that could very well fall onto the floor, because if anything falls onto the floor, that alarm will go off, obviously, because the dude's not in there. It is just insane how tense you get. And every single time I watch the scene, the sequence, I am like holding my breath, even though I know the outcome already. So what I was saying before, something that I did catch, there was a rat in the vent. So what's another word for mole that a lot of people use? It's a rat. So to physically see a rat near Krieger in the vent foreshadows who he is later on in this film. And you don't catch it because you're just so invested in what's happening with Ethan that symbolism you're just not going to actually register until later on. So obviously loses his grip a bit, has to kill the rat. Ethan is almost touching the floor and he has to get back up. He does manage to upload everything before the guy comes. They get up into the vent with time to spare, and then the second Krieger takes the knock list from Ethan, he drops the knife because he was too eager to get his hands on the knock list. The knife is spiraling down, and then boom, it lands on the desk. Not on the floor, on the desk. So that gives them enough time to like get out of there. They got out of there scot-free. But the guy that walks in, obviously in charge of everything, why the hell is there a knife on my desk, right? Kittredge is notified, everyone is notified, and then everyone is out for Ethan Hunt. So after that, he notices that the Bible that had Job 3:14 that gave him the little clue there was opened. And at the very front of it, in the hardcover on the inside, he sees that it's stamped the Drake Hotel. Now, the Drake Hotel is something that John Voight, mentioned at the beginning of the film. That's the hotel that he would stay at, as IMF would kind of like put them up at a hotel, right? So he mentioned that. And now that he knows who Max is, maybe Max is the one that was working with Jim, and that's who set him up at the hotel, and it was stamped because that's the one that he stole. So that was just like in his head. But De Palma doesn't make the audience feel stupid. That's the thing. De Palma brings you along for the ride. So sometimes he'll plant the information that he wants you to know. He doesn't do everything, but he'll show you little hints of what Ethan does pick up on, and then what ends up happening. So that is a good thing. The audience is in the loop, and that's what makes you feel like you're a part of the Mission Impossible team. So right after that, Ethan knows that he has to go to London because that's where, the Drake Hotel was. He calls Kittredge so he knows where he is. because he kind of knows that someone's going to show up out of the blue, and rightfully so, Jim shows up. Now, we have to keep in mind, this isn't like a week or a month. This is a couple of days that it's happening, but Jim's alive. And there's this amazing sit down between Jon Voight and Tom Cruise, and they're discussing who the mole is. So when Jon Voight, who plays Jim, kind of pins it on Kittredge, Ethan's a bit confused. So in that moment, while Jim's going through everything that happened, they do flashbacks to show that Jim is the actual mole. So when Jim got shot, he shot himself with a blank, and then he had like paint, whatever he had, and he had like a little explosion on his shirt. People were switched out of cars. There were a second team all around looking at it, and then you see that Krieger, Jean Renault, is the one who killed Kristen Scott Thomas and the guy who had the knock list. So all of this is being shown to you, saying Jim is the mole without blatantly saying it, because there's so much more to come on the phenomenal train sequence. So the way that this is paced is really well done. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I think the action set pieces were placed at certain points where it did need to pick up a bit, but you needed to see Ethan in action. I think you wanted to see a lot more of him, and he did a lot of great work in this first Mission Impossible to make Ethan Hunt one of the best spies, right? And he's just so strong at what he does. So this entire train sequence is really cool. You have Ethan Hunt talking to Claire, which is Jim's wife, and then he tells her, meet me in the baggage room, after he's ready to have like this transfer with Max, who's also on the train. And then you have Luther trying to stop the download from happening at the exact same time. All of that's happening. And then Claire meets him in the baggage room, but she sees that Jim is there. And obviously Claire knew that Jim was alive this whole time, and she was playing Ethan Hunt. So what happens? Claire just says everything. She doesn't know. Right? And then in that moment, Ethan takes off the mask of Jim and says, I knew it. I can't believe you would do this to me, blah, 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 blah. All of that. You knew Jim was alive. And then right after that reveal happens, Jon Voight comes out of the other curtain from the front, and he has a gun on Ethan. So they have a massive conversation about who the mole is, what had happened, what the purpose was. Ethan had to give the money away and gave it to Claire. Claire gave it to Jim. But the only thing is that Claire was starting to like Ethan, and Jim hated that. So obviously, if you had to pretend that your husband's dead, you had to kind of flirt with Ethan and be a bit extra and saucy with Ethan. So that is what threw Ethan off. But Jim was just pissed because, why are you going after my wife? He still wants to kill Ethan. So right before he kills Ethan, those same glasses that they started the first mission with, Ethan put on the glasses. Kittredge sees on his little, not Apple Watch back in the 90s, that Jim is alive. And everyone knows Jim still shoots Ethan, and then this big fight scene happens. They're on top of the train. There's a helicopter because of Krieger. That whole thing, it may look a bit fake at times, but it's still filled with so much tension that they're on a moving train. A helicopter with blades are just gonna go and attack. Like, you're going through a tunnel with a helicopter and a train. It was so good. They're jumping from side to side. They're punching each other. They're hanging from the helicopter. It's just amazing stuff. And Ethan comes out on top because of a stick of gum that Emilio Estevez gave him at the beginning of this movie, that this will cause an explosion. And he ended up getting out scot-free. The reaction shots are the most important in this film, and De Palma does it so well. I love this first film. And we see at the very end of this is kind of like a happy ending. They ended it, but they didn't end it at the same time, because they knew that if they made bank, they would make another one. They didn't anticipate how big this franchise was going to get, because the ending of this first film, you have Luther and Ethan sitting there. Luther is no longer disavowed, but Ethan is still disavowed. And Ethan's like, I don't want to go back to IMF. There's nothing to offer me there. This really, like, you know, put a weird spin on everything. He protected his family in the meantime. Luther went back. So you still have a friend in Luther. And I absolutely adore Ving Rhames. I think he brings such a grounded level to Ethan Hunt, even in other films that we see. I think he just grounds him. And Ethan has some crazy ideas that, you know, Luther goes along with, but at the same time, he respects him and there's a mutual respect there. So I love that Ving Rhames has been here since day one. I think he's an excellent addition to this family and he's an OG. I love him to death. And I think the way they ended it is that Ethan has a friend that he can trust. And that's really important in this business, in this line of work that he's in. So he gets onto a plane. All right. He gets onto that plane. He's sleeping. He may go on vacation. Who knows where he's going? The stewardess asks him, "Sir, would you like to watch a movie?" And he says, "Nah, I'm okay." She insists. Then the theme music comes back on. You know, he's ready for another mission. So I think that through and through, this is a 5-star. It's a 5 out of 5. The first Mission Impossible is excellent for all the reasons I just stated. It's so good because of Brian De Palma and what he brought to this spy movie. So please let me know in the comments below why you love the first Mission Impossible. Is it the best Mission Impossible? Is the Mission Impossible franchise the best action film franchise to exist above 007 and above Fast and Furious? Is it Mission Impossible? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can always follow me over at AMX ND Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And if you guys want to help me grow this wonderful community, you can find out ways to do that in the bio below. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep watching movies.